Hello students, welcome to this live YouTube session. Today we are going to see transport in plants. Transport in plants, actually transport in plants, so transportation process across plant structure or plant body. Okay, so transport in plants. Before we are going to the session of the questions resolved session, I mean the problems, how to solve the Neet questions and all in transport in plants, I would like to give you the introduction about the transport in plants. So what is getting transport? What is getting transport and why it is transport? Okay, and the final one is how it is transport. Okay, so in plant system there is a types of cells, tissues which do transportation process. That is nothing but xylem and phloem. Okay, this xylem and phloem are collectively called as vascular system. Okay, this vascular system is actually acting as a transportation tubes. They're acting as a transportation tubes. The tubes which doing the transport process. Okay, so what exactly the kind of a content, what is exactly, it's what is getting transport inside the plant system? It's nothing but the minerals, okay, plus include of microbes of symbiotic associated microbes into the root system, and you can see the water content. So these are all the main the assets, the future, the resource of the sources of the substrate of the photosynthetic process. Okay, so the minerals which are helps in various types of physiological functions in plant system, as well as the water is doing a more important process. Without H2O complement of H2O, without H2O there is no physiological process occurs in any types of living organisms. And here you can see the H2O is much important, and minerals are uptake in the form of ions within the root system of the plants. Okay, so what exactly the kind of a transportation process? Transport in plants means what exactly is getting transport? The waters, minerals, and some amount of symbiotic microorganisms inside of a root system, and synthesized materials which are done by the photosynthetic process. Okay, the plants are always, belongs to what? They belongs to autotrophic type of nutrition. Okay, they are autotrophic types of nutrition. They can produce their own food by trapping the light energy and converting that light energy into the chemical energy form in the form of ATP and NADPH. Okay, so what is getting transport? This is the the kind of minerals and soils and soil minerals and microbes and some other types of the water content. All these will be transport. And why it is getting transport? Because it include within the physiological process. It include within the physiological process. What are all the physiological process? It required photosynthesis and respiration and growth, and finally reproduction. So for all these purposes, it required minerals and waters and some other microbe support to live in this organisms as a autotrophic types of organism. And here we're going to talk about the transport of water and foods in plants will be carried out by two different types of the components, which is xylem and phloem. They are called as vascular tissues. They are called as vascular tissues. When you talk about the animals, we used to say the word circulation. Okay, but in plants we used to say that transportation. Okay, so this is how exactly the water has been absorbed by the root system, and the water travels to the uptrunk area to all the parts of the plants, getting to know the kind of a process which involve in photosynthesis. Okay, so the photosynthesis is produced the food molecules of the plant system. And now we're going to talk about how exactly the light is getting trapped here, and they are creating a sugar, and O2 will be released, CO2 will be intake, and H2O is also getting released out of the stomatal opening. And here you can see the minerals and waters are getting incorporated into the plant system. So this is what exactly the transport of plants process required. And here you can see the unidirectional transport and multidirectional transport. Okay? So unidirectional transport, multidirectional transport. Okay, so transport in plants is nothing. There is a process involved in the moving of transport in plants, means there is a moving of minerals plus synthesized food materials. Okay, and you can see some of the water content. Okay, see the water content is helping for all the minerals to getting dissolved and will be uptake in the form of ions inside of a root system. And here the moving of minerals and synthesized food materials, and these are all the components. These are all the components for what? The water is getting incorporated, the minerals are getting incorporated into the plant system. Okay, so here the transport in plants. Transport in plants required certain, it's a very important physiological process occurs in transport in plants. Okay, so transport in plants required certain physiological process. What are all the physiological process? Mainly photosynthesis. And main you can see the photosynthesis process required, and you can see the respiration. These are all the important process taking over by transportation process, because all the synthesized chemicals, the food materials, so glucose materials, everything will be synthesized in the form of photosynthesis process by converting trapping the light energy and converting into chemical energy. So what happens here, the transport in plants photosynthesis required some minerals for doing a photosynthesis process. So that is nothing but H2O and minerals. H2O and minerals. ஓகேங்களா? So H2O minerals ரெண்டுமே சேர்ந்து transport in processல என்ன ஒன்று பார்த்தீங்க அப்படின்னா, root system follow பண்ணி stem regions and leaf regions and branches over the leaf surface region வரைக்கும் transport in plant process work ஆகும். See, you have to be very clear with this informations. Transport in plantsல பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, first உங்களுக்கு என்னென்ன இன்ஃபர்மேஷன்லாம் தெரியணும் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, there is transportation process, transport of minerals. Okay, transport of minerals travel ஆகும் plant system from the root to the stem, okay, and to the leaf. So leaf surface க்கு தேவையான water content, minerals, and some other the nutrients, all will be provided by the transport process. So that is the transport in plants mainly occurs. Root system is having a capacity for absorption of water content. with what water content oda enna agudhu, what happens, the minerals are getting involved in that, nutrients are getting involved in that, they are coming inside of a root system, and root system kulla vandadukku apparama stem regions la adu move agi stem la the leaf ku move agum. So leaf surface la pathina the water content minerals and nutrients irukumbodhu photosynthesis process உங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப ரொம்ப ஈஸியா நடக்கும். So the photosynthesis நடந்ததுன்னா the plant can easily produce their own food, they can live, they do metabolism process, they can do physiological process like respiration, reproduction and growth. All those things will be come under the particular process. So the transport in plants are எப்படி வந்து பிளான்ட்ஸ் குள்ள இருக்கிற அந்த ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்போர்ட்டேஷன் சிஸ்டம் எப்படி ஒர்க் ஆகும்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா வாஸ்குலர் சிஸ்டம் மூலமாக தான் ஒர்க் ஆகுது. ஓகேங்களா? So the vascular systems are nothing, they are xylem and they are phloem. ஓகேங்களா? So the xylem and phloem are vascular tissue. They are vascular tissue. The tissues are similar or dissimilar types of cells which do certain functions. So on the tissues, the vascular tissues also is important role in xylem and phloem formers to do transport in plants work. So here you can see unidirectional transport. Transport is two types in taking over in plant system. Rendu vidama plants la vandu transportation process move agudhu. I mean from the root system to stem regions, students, and leaf regions. Okay, so two types of information. One is unidirectional, unitransport. That means what? Transport of water and minerals. Xylem is doing waters and minerals ரொம்ப அதிகமா என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க, root to stem and leaves க்கு transfer பண்ணுவாங்க. எந்த directionல? Unidirectional. And here the multidirectional transportation process also occurs in plants. Multidirectional. Unidirectional mean only in this direction, but multidirectional is going in this way. And here multidirectional transport system is required. Transport of photosynthetates, organic compounds, and transport of mineral nutrients. Minerals and nutrients and organic compounds which are synthesized by the photosynthetic process. அதுதான் என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்க அப்படின்னா transport in plants ல ரொம்ப ரொம்ப முக்கியமான விஷயம், that process called as translocation. ஓகேங்களா? Translocation and the meaning, what is exactly the translocation? The synthesized food materials, okay, I mean the glucose which is produced by the and some of the proteins, okay, these are all the main things which is getting transferred from one region to another region with the help of phloem. Okay, so that is multi-directional transport system, and two different types of transport system which is present inside the plant system. One வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா unidirectional transport, ஒரே directionல மட்டும் தான் the transportation process work ஆகும். Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா multi-directional transport system. Multi-directional and the transport system work ஆகும். So the translocation is very important. All the minerals, all the mineral nutrients and organic components will be moved, but there is only one component will not move. அதாவது remobilization process க்கு ஒரே ஒரு எலிமெண்ட் மட்டும் மூவ் ஆகாது. அது மூவ் ஆகாது என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா கால்சியம் மட்டுமே என்ன ஆகாது, ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்லோகேஷன் ப்ராசஸில் அது சேராது. ஓகேங்களா? ஸோ மற்ற எல்லா எலிமெண்ட்ஸும் மற்ற எல்லா காம்பனன்ட்ஸும் it will be move multidirectional transport by the phloem system. And there is a two different types of system which is xylem and phloem, which is called as vascular tissues, the transportation tubes. The transportation tubes are doing a transport work for all the physiological process to get to start and do. Okay, and here you can see means of transport. How? See, there is a water system, the water plus minerals and some other nutrients, okay, and this will come inside of a root system. Okay, root system குள்ள வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் என்ன ஆகுது, stem regions குள்ள வருது. Stem regions குள்ள வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் எங்க போகுது, leaf regions குள்ள போகுது. See, இந்த leaf குள்ள போறதுக்கு முன்னாடி it has to cross the stem region, it has to cross the entire root system. So by means of three different types of reactions it's crossing. Okay, see, consider this area is a root system and this area is a stem and this area is the leaf. Okay, this area is the leaf. Okay, root system குள்ள என்ன இருக்கும் அப்படினு பாத்தீங்கன்னா the cells will be present. Okay, the stem regions லயும் cells will be present. The leaf region is also having cells. So all the cells are having a very important process called cell wall content. Cell wall content plant la irukku illingla. For when you compare to the animal cell has no cell wall. But it has to cross the 3 different types of process, which is called as diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and active transport. And diffusion means what? There is a plasma membrane. Plasma membrane enna meaning? Plasma membrane is the kind of a membrane present inside of a cell wall, after the cell wall. And here you can see higher concentration to lower concentration, diffusion. Fusion means aggregated, okay? Diffusion means what? The closely related particles are getting separated and move to lower concentration. That is what the diffusion. The higher concentration region will be converted into lower, the particles which move from a higher to lower concentration, where the diffusion process take over inside of a plant cells. That's what here. They are having the roots. Inside the root, there is a process called diffusion taking over, and that will move to the next cell, next cell, next cell. ஒவ்வொரு செல்லா கிராஸ் பண்ணி போகணும். ஒவ்வொரு செல்லிலையும் பிளாஸ்மா மெம்பரேன் இருக்கும், ஒவ்வொரு செல்லிலையும் செல் வால் இருக்கும். எல்லா விஷயத்தையும் இங்கே என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க? The contents of the minerals and nutrients and water will be move from one place to another, and it will reach to stem, and stem region ko ponadukku appuram it leads to leaf. So by means of these reaction, there is a 3 process occurs, is called as diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and active transport. See, diffusion is different. Facilitated diffusion what? Diffusion ko facilitated diffusion ko enna vyathyasam pathina, facilitated diffusion, there is a kind of a protein which is present inside of a plasma membrane, will help for the movement of the particle into higher concentration to lower concentration. Diffusion வந்து ரொம்ப slow process, சரிங்களா students? Diffusion is very slow process. It no required energy, and facilitated diffusion also no required energy, because அங்க இருக்கிற ஒரு protein என்ன பண்ணும், இங்க இருக்கிற molecules carry பண்ணி கொண்டு போயிட்டு அந்த lower concentration regionsல அனுப்பிடும். So the facilitated diffusion is a normal process, and active transport is nothing, it required energy, ATP molecules. So the lower concentration region to higher concentration, there is a movement of particles. Particles means what? What is this? This is ions. These ions are nothing but minerals. Okay, the minerals are which are intaking in the form of ions only in the root system, then it will be transferred to the all parts of the plants. So we'll move on to the next one, the passive unipods and symports and antiports. These are all the directional pathway of the water content is getting moved from one cell to another. Here you can see the unipod. A molecule alone moves across membrane through the transport or a carrier protein. So the unipod is molecule across there is the carrier protein, it will move across it. This is plasma membrane. This is plasma membrane of a cell, of a plant cell. And here antiport means what? 2 molecules move in opposite direction. In the outside region lande ulla oru molecules inside region lande ulla oru molecules move agum. And here symport means what? Both information, 2 molecules are moving towards inside, that is symport. 2 molecules together cross in the membrane of same direction. So these are all the basic information, and you should know very well about உங்களுக்கு கண்டிப்பா தெரிஞ்சிருக்கணும் water potential அப்படினா என்ன அப்படின்றது when you talk about transport in plants. Water content is having some potential. And the potential இருந்தாதான் water என்ன ஆகும் அப்படினா root system குள்ள வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறமா அது stem regionக்கும் leaf regionக்கும் travel ஆகி போக முடியும். So the water has to show some potential process. It has some energy, so it carry out for photosynthesis process easily. Water இருக்கிற potential இருந்தாதான் அது stem region leaf regionக்கு போய் சேர முடியும். சேர்ந்தாதான் அங்க என்ன process நடக்கும்? Photosynthesis நடக்கும். Photosynthesis successfully happen means only they can produce their own food, they can live life, the plants are. Okay, so the term of water potential is the measure of potential energy in water. I told you that it's the energy, which is how energy the water is content. So that is also important. That will decide the movement of the water the movement of the water to the lower level to higher level. I mean the root system, stem region and leaf region. And this is the equation which represents the water potential here. A psi system is equal to psi total, and this is solute potential, pressure potential, gravitational potential and capillary potential. Solute potential, the solutes which present inside that particular water is contained solute potential, and pressure, how exactly the pressure has been created into the particular movement of the one region to another region, particles, that is also plays important role. And here the solute potential is which need to be applied in solution to prevent inward flow of the water, I mean inner side the flow of the water across the semi-permeable membrane. Semi-permeable membrane is nothing but a plasma membrane. And here we're going to talk about the next important information is concentration gradient. Concentration gradients is play very important role in transport in plant, students, because it has to the water content has to move to root to stem region, then leaf region. Okay, each part is having a cells. A cell is having a fluid materials. Cell is having a fluid material. That fluid materials decides how the cell is being giving intaking of water and leaving of the water, the liberation of the water from the cell. Unequal distribution of ions between the intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. That is actually concentration gradient. I mean, there is a cell, okay, and there is a outside what exactly the extracellular fluid, inside what is exactly intracellular fluid. That is where you can see the two different types of location. But enna agonga equal distributions are ions irukadu. Ions na enna meaning, what is that? Ions are nothing but the minerals. Ions are nothing but minerals, because minerals are converted into ions when they are intaking into the root system of the plants, when they are getting absorbed by the root system. Okay, so this is the basic information you should know when you talk about the transport in plants. So today, students, we are having 10 questions. Okay, we are going to see that we are going to solve the 10 questions. From that, we are going to see the first question, the which one gives the most valid and reasoned explanation for stomatal movements. Okay, stomatal movement is very important. Stomata. Okay, stomata is very important because the stomatal movement gives you the opening and closing of the leaf surface area where the gaseous exchange takes place and intake of CO2 and liberation of O2, as well as the unwanted content, the excessive amount of water has been released by the stomatal movement, stomatal opening and closing process. And the first option, we are going to see the potassium influx and efflux and starch hydrolysis process and God cell photosynthesis and transpiration. See, so starch hydrolysis process is never compared with this particular stomatal movements, because the starch which is present inside of a plant cell is a reserved food material. So here God cell photosynthesis, the God cells are present inside the stomatal cells where you can see the photosynthesis also takes place. So that will not help in the the which one give the explanation for stomatal movement. What is meant by stomatal movement? It's nothing but opening and closing process. And here the transpiration process. Transpiration means what? The excessive amount of water which is absorbed by the plant system will be removed out of the plant system in the stomatal pores. So that is transpiration. That means generally we can say the evaporation sollalam. Water content plant cell kullarndu cell மேல இருந்து evaporate ஆகி வெளியில போற process சொல்லலாம். Transpiration அப்படினு சொல்லலாம். Evaporate of the plant information. And here what exactly the God cells are? Here you can, this is the God cells. Can you see the K plus ions, the potassiums are getting inside, and here the water molecules. This actually open region of the stomata. The cells are turgid, open region, and here the cells are placid. The stomata has been closed. Here you can see the water is getting inside, the water is going outside, and include that K plus ions also getting inside. What is exactly the K plus ions? The potassium influx and efflux. I mean incoming and outgoing will be very important when you talk about here. The stomatal moving is also important. Stomata is getting open. Why exactly? What is the reason for opening? We are going to see. huge amounts of potassium ions accumulated in the God cells to increase the solute potential, and water potential is dropped. Solute potential, I mean அங்க இருக்கிற water contentக்கு இருக்கிற அந்த ஒரு potential solutes உள்ள வந்து என்ன பண்ணும், அதை குறைச்சிரும். the குறைச்சா என்ன ஆகும், the water causes the water to neighboring cells to enter the God cell and become a turgid or swollen. So இந்த ரீசனால என்னவாகுது, opening of the stomata will be takes place. And here you can see the closing, how exactly the closing process. The closing process means what, the potassium ions are moved out of this cell, and the opposite phenomena of the opening process. So this occurs when the water is removed. Water remove ஆகிறப்ப தான் இந்த process நடக்குது. And here you can see this causes stomatal pore to close. And absence of flight or when rates of photosynthesis are low. Okay, stomatal pore எப்போ க்ளோஸ் ஆகும், லைட் ஆப்சன்ஸ்லேயும் க்ளோஸ் ஆகும், when the photosynthesis are லோவாக இருக்கும்போது க்ளோஸ் ஆகும். ஏன் photosynthesis லோவாக இருக்கிறப்போ stomatal pore க்ளோஸ் ஆகுது, photosynthesis process நடந்ததுன்னா water splicing process நடக்கும். I mean H plus ion plus O2 will be removed. So H plus ions will be created, and O2, the water content will be waste. So the photosynthesis rate லோவாக இருந்ததுன்னா stomatal pore வந்து க்ளோஸ் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னா water content plant material வந்து வெளியில் போகாது. So the plant-க்கு தேவையான water content உள்ளே இருக்கும். So that is the problem. So in the conditionல இருக்கும்போது the stomatal pore is closed. So here, so the K plus ions, you can see the potassium influx and efflux play important role in this section of the question. So the option 1 is the right answer, potassium influx and efflux. How the opening and closing of a stomata are caused by the influx and efflux of the potassium ions, and increased ions result in stoma and in the opening of the stoma and decrease in closing of the stoma. Stoma is nothing but the center part of the stomatal pore which is getting closed and open, and turgidity of the cell is also induced the opening of the pores of the stoma. Turgidity means what, the water will be moved out of the cell, so the turgidity process, and are found on the surface of the leaves. So in the region ku pathinga appadina, here you can see the potassium influx and efflux is the right answer. So the open ஆகும்போது என்ன நடக்கும் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா potassium வந்து ரொம்ப அதிகமாக என்ன ஆகும், உள்ள வரும். So open ஆகும்போது சரி, க்ளோஸ் ஆகும்போது சரி, potassium ionsோட ரோல் வந்து ரொம்ப பெருசு எங்க, stomatal opening and closeல. So that is the reason why the stomatal is getting closed and open. So potassium ions are playing important role in opening and stomatal movement process. That means two different types of process. So here the option is first option, potassium influx and efflux is the right answer. Okay, so we're going to see the next question, and water potential of the pure water. Okay, the water potential of the pure water is asked in 2017. 2017 என்ன பண்ணிருக்காங்க, இந்த question கேட்டிருக்காங்க. ஓகேங்களா, medical entrance examinationsல. So the less than 0 and more than 0 but less than 1 and more than 1 and 0. So water potential, here water potential, I already told you that water potential means what, how exactly the energy content are present inside. Okay, how exactly the energy content are present inside. So the energy content, how exactly the water potential actually in the pure water or the water potential enna kekranga, because the pure water, the measurement potential energy in water and depends upon the solute concentration. Solute, okay, the solute which present in the water, அதோட கான்சென்ட்ரேஷன் என்னவாகும், டிபெண்ட்ஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கு, எதை, வாட்டர் பொட்டன்ஷியலில் டிபெண்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கு. ஸோ இந்த சொல்யூட் என்னவா இருக்கோ அதோட தன்மை தான் அந்த வாட்டர்லேயும் ரிஃப்ளெக்ட் ஆகும். ஸோ இந்த வாட்டரில் ரிஃப்ளெக்ட் ஆகும்போது அதோட எனர்ஜி எப்படி இருக்கும்ன்றது கேட்குறாங்க. ஸோ இந்த வாட்டர் கண்டென்ட் எப்பயுமே வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the potential of a pure water, see you have to be very clear, pure water always doesn't possess any solute molecules. அதில் pure water இருந்தால் என்ன இருக்கும், solute molecules எதுவுமே இருக்காது. So the okay, we are drinking a purified water, right? Purified water, there is a two different types of water, which is minerals water and purified water. We are drinking purified water. Mineral waters are naturally occur in the river side and all. So the water content which is pure doesn't contain any solute molecules. So that water potential is 0. Okay, Okay, so the 0 is the right answer. Option 4th is the right answer. The water potential of the pure water is a standard temperature, or standard temperature la or water potential of pure water eppadi irukum, which is not under any pressure li eppadi irukum appdi pathina 0 la da irukum. So xi is equal to 0. Okay, so the option 4 is the right answer. Okay, so we completed 2 questions. We're going to see only 8 questions to go. Okay, this is the third question. We're going to see a column of water in xylem, okay, in vessels of the tall trees doesn't break under its weight because of. This question was asked in 2015 year, and here the option is tensile strength of water and lignification of xylem vessels and positive root pressure and dissolved sugars in water. And we are going to see one by one what all the options are. First, here you can see the tensile strength of water. This tensile strength of water means the ability. See, the water content enga irukum appdin pathina root system la irundhu stem region ku move agum, anga irundhu leaf region ku move agum. Idhu dhaan normal process. Idukku nariya ulla irukra process nariya vela nadakudhu. And tensile strength of the water is what? The water which is moved inside a plant system is having some ability to resist the pulling force. Okay, and it depends upon the cohesion adhesion of the water property. So mainly the cohesion adhesion process moolamada in the process tensile strength process continue agum water la. So next option enna pathina lignification of xylem vessels. So lignin distribution irukku in the cells la xylem cells la. So adu enna pannum appdin pathina lignin process, lignin materials xylem cells la walls la irundaduna and distribute ஆனதுக்கு அப்புறமா ion mediated changes in the xylem flow rate. Ion mediated means what? The minerals mediated change. அங்க ஒரு mediation process, movement processல change நடக்கும். So அந்த change xylem flow rate affect பண்ணும். Xylem flow rate affect பண்ணா what is happen? Xylem flow rate affect பண்ணா the uptake of waters will be decrease. And here you can see the positive root pressure has nothing, active absorption. Active absorption is very important absorption process in plant system is happening, and there is no energy required. Active transport is different. Okay, that required energy, but when you talk about the active absorption, there is no energy required. And dissolved sugar in water disrupt the sensitivity of the pH of the balance and affect osmosis in roots. See, osmosis in roots, osmosis is also one of the most important process taking over in transportation process. Okay, transport process nadakrappo diffusion process, facilitated diffusion process, osmosis process, இந்த மூணு processமே ரொம்ப அதிகமா நடக்கிற ஒரு reactions. So this dissolved sugars in water, what happens, it's affect the pH balance of the particular area and the root system la osmosis process affect பண்ணும். So these are all the 4 options. Here the question is a column of water in xylem vessels of the tall trees doesn't break under its weight because of. So இதிலே உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சிருக்கும். So எந்த இடத்துல வந்து process நடக்குது எக்ஸாக்ட்டா எது tall trees ஏன் அது break பண்ண முடியல under its weight because of what reason. And here the due to tensile strength of the water and column of water within the xylem vessels. Xylem vessel is also play important role conduction of water. So the tensile strength is also present inside the water when they have incorporated into the plant system, and the tall trees doesn't break under its weight. So option 1 is the right answer. And here we're going to see the next question, students. Question number 4. And the transpiration and root pressures cause water to rise in plants. Okay, transpiration and root pressure cause water in plants. How exactly? By pulling and pushing respectively, and pushing it upward, and pushing it, pulling it respectively, and pushing it downward. Okay, so pulling process, pushing process, then pushing and pulling, then pushing it upward, pushing it upward, pushing downward. So options are there. So exactly which function is doing for transpiration and root pressure cause water to rise in plants? Plants kulla water content அதிகமாகிறதுக்கு எந்த process work ஆகும்னு கேட்குறாங்க. Transpiration process, root pressure process. See, why transpiration process is here? Transpiration process நடந்தாதான் root pressure அங்க create ஆகும். Excess amount of water will be evaporated from the leaf surface, and there is a requirement of water in the plant system will increase. So the root has to be absorb more water. So the root pressure will be created by the transpiration process, okay? And here the transpiration and root pressure cause water to rise in plants, and pulling it, pushing it respectively, pushing it upward, and pushing and pulling it respectively, and pushing it downward. So here we're going to talk about the transpiration causes water to rise in plants by pulling and through xylem elements. The root pressure causes water rises in plants by pushing water in xylem components. See, the water will be done by what type of process? Pulling and pushing via transpiration and root pressure respectively. Here you can see the option is how exactly the xylem vessels, phloem vessels are doing process of transportation. Here only one way, unidirectional, but here you can see the multidirectional way. So two-way flow of the components inside the transportation tubes, waters and food, and cells have end walls perforations and no end wall perforations, and one way only, and waters and minerals will be transported across the plant system. And thick walls stiffened with the lignin, and lignification of xylem is also important process. And here the phloem and xylem, two different types of process where you can see the transpiration and root pressure has been occur. And here the option is 1 is the right answer, because the transpiration creates pulling process, negative pressure, okay, and root pressure creates positive pressure which developed in the xylem, and it can be measured by the manometer. And transpiration and root pressure will be help for pulling and pushing it respectively. And here the option 1 is the right answer. And here we're going to see the next question. Which of the following criteria doesn't pertain to facilitate transport? High selectively transport saturation, okay, and you can see uphill transport, requirement of special membrane proteins. Question enna, which of the following, okay, which of the following criteria doesn't pertain to facilitate transport? Facilitate transport க்கு எந்த ஒரு விஷயம் இங்க யூஸ் ஆகாம இருக்கும்னு கேக்குறாங்க. Okay, so high selectively transport saturation and uphill transport and requirement of special membrane proteins. Okay, so the requirement of special membrane proteins, what type of proteins? Membrane proteins எங்க இருக்கும்? Plasma membrane la இருக்கும், ஓகேங்களா? and அந்த requirement மூலமா இங்க facilitate transport நடக்குதா, and uphill transport மூலமா நடக்குதா, which actually that doesn't pertain to facilitate transport. And this question was asked in 2013. You have to be remember on it. And here we are going to see exactly high selectively. High selectively means what happens, what is exactly the meaning of it? Active transport process. Active transport process, what? It has to move the molecules from a higher concentration area and lower concentration area. And you can see active transport always works against concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. Okay, so the concentration gradient is important. It's unequal, a distribution of the ions in the extracellular and intracellular fluids of the cell materials. And here next one is transport saturation. Transport saturation, which actually a carrier protein in transfer the solute molecules across the lipid bilayer, resembles in the enzyme substrate reaction. Here bilipid layer present in the plasma membrane, students. Okay, so the bilipid layer la irukra andha oru region la the solute molecules will grow and come by means of carrier protein transfer process. So the carrier protein transfer பண்ற அந்த ஒரு process என்னன்னு சொல்றாங்க? Transport saturation. And here the substance of the hydrophilic moiety. What is exactly mean by hydrophilic moiety? Water loving substances. Okay, water loving substances. So the water loving substances will actually ரொம்ப கஷ்டப்படும். எங்க போகுது அப்படினு பாத்தீங்கன்னா membrane மூலம் வெளியில வர்றதுக்கு அது ரொம்ப difficult to pass it, and the movement has to be facilitated. அதாவது there is a reason here, you can see it's very clearly, I can explain you. The facilitate transport is nothing but here the facilitate diffusion is we are talking about. Okay, so there is a plasma membrane, there is a outside cell region. Okay, inside you can see the cell walls and plasma membrane, inside this is intracellular area. Okay, there is a molecules are coming here, the ions. The ions are converted, the minerals are converted into ions, and the ions are உள்ள வராங்க. அந்த ions உள்ள வரப்ப என்ன ஆகும், இந்த plasma membraneல இருக்கிற இந்த ஒரு regionல இருக்கிற protein, which type of protein? Membrane protein. இந்த membrane protein என்ன பண்ணுனா, இந்த molecules இங்கிருந்து மூவ் பண்ணி inside the cell கொண்டு போறதுக்கு help பண்ணும். So someone is here facilitating this reaction to move from this region to another region across cell membrane, across plasma membrane. That is called as facilitated diffusion. And the facilitated diffusions will never require no energy. Energy தேவையில்லை, ATP energy இல்லாம போணும். Because what happens here, the membrane protein தான் என்ன பண்றாங்க இங்க, அதை help பண்ணி கொண்டு போறாங்க. Because they are actually what? Hydrophilic moiety substances. Hydrophilic moiety substances are called as water loving substances. They can easily mingle with the water content. And here you can see the transport rate reaches maximum when all of the protein transporters are being used. எல்லா transportation proteins transport பண்ற அந்த protein இந்த regionல இருந்து இந்த regionக்கு கொண்டு போற எல்லா proteins-உமே அங்க யூஸ் ஆயிடுச்சு அப்படின்னா, that is called as saturation. And facilitated diffusion is very specific reaction because it's very different. It's a kind of a different reaction when compared to the diffusion. Diffusion is a very slow process, but facilitated diffusion is also slow process. But when compared to that, diffusion ko facilitated diffusion ku irukra difference enna, diffusion automatically konjam konjama slowa or higher concentration to low diffusion enna agum move agum. And facilitated diffusion is nothing, there is some types of proteins are involved, the membrane proteins are involved in that region to carry the molecules from this region to another region. So that's very specific. So here the option is uphill transport. Why uphill transport is answer? Because uphill transport means what? It required net of transport molecules, that is uphill transfer from a low to higher concentration. So that will not work here because the facilitated diffusion is without energy as well as there is a membrane proteins are involved in it. So that is the right answer. We're going to see the next question, and here you can see the statement 1 and 2. Wilting occurs due to the loss in turgidity, and Targar pressure checks the excessive entry of water into cells. Two different types of statements are there, statement 1 and statement 2. Okay, so statement 1 is true, but statement 2 is true. Statement 2 is not a correct explanation for statement 1, and statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true, and statement 2 is not the correct explanation for the 1. And statement 1 true, 1 2 both, statement 1 is true, statement 2 is false, and here both the statements are false. So these are all the options. So before we go into that, you have to be very clear with what exactly present in the statement. Wilting process occurs due to loss in turgidity. On the line enna solundradha you have to be clear. And Targar pressure checks the excessive entry of water into cells. Targar pressure means what? Turgidity, Targar pressure, and here you can see the checks the excessive entry of water into the cells. எவ்வளோ அதிகமான cells வாட்டருக்குள்ள என்ட்ரி ஆகுதுன்றதை செக் பண்ற ஒரு pressure அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு சொல்றாங்க. So the wilting occurs due to loss in turgidity, and Targar pressure checks the excessive entry of water into cells. Here the transpiration, இதுல ரொம்ப முக்கியமான விஷயம் நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்க வேண்டியது என்னன்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, the transpiration process என்னன்றதை தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும். Okay, so the transpiration is it causes more water to be lost than is coming in. Then the water balance within the plant get thrown off. அதாவது transpiration process மூலமா அதிகமான water use ஆகி வெளியில போயிடுச்சு அப்படின்னா பிளான்ட்டுக்குள்ள இருக்கிற water content will be balanced, வந்து என்ன ஆகும், குறைஞ்சிடும். So that is calling, that's dehydrated collapsing cells. Dehydrated means what? The water content removing process. The water content remove ஆனாங்க என்ன ஆகும், cells ஓட metabolic process will be collapsed. In the structure leaves and stems it can also no longer remain erect. So the plant begins to wilt. Okay, அப்படியே dry அப்படியே சோர்ந்து போயிடுவாங்க. So the transpiration process, excess amount of water transpire பண்ணிட்டே இருந்தா what happens? The low content of the water present inside the plant will make them wilting. And here you can see this is the 3 different types of process occurs when the transpiration process take over as within the cells. Okay, so not a transpiration, but in the wilting process எப்படி நடக்குதுன்றதை சொல்றேன். So the water எந்த மாதிரி டைப்ல மூவ் ஆகுது செல்லுக்குள்ள இருந்து பார்க்கலாம். Hypertonic solution, isotonic, hypotonic. Plasmolyzed process. Plasmolyzed means what? Plasmo, aquatic, okay, water content, lysed, okay. The plasma will be removed from the plant cell, and that is plasmolyzed. Here you can see the placid. That means what? Water is getting inside and water is going outside. That is isotonic. And hypertonic, here you can see it's become turgid. It becomes turgid. There is a disturbance of the cellular metabolism process inside, penetrating the water content. Here you can see. And 3 different types of information: hypertonic, isotonic, hypotonic. Hypertonic contains more dissolved particles, and isotonic contains same water concentration both the sides of the cell membrane. Again, I mean the cell walls are between the cells, right? So both the sides of the cell membrane. So hypertonic solution will fill up the water and then burst. So these 3 different types of reactions taking over inside a plant cell when there is a the wilting of the process. Targar pressure of the process is checking the entry of the water into the cells. So statement 2 and statement 1 both we discussed. So what is exactly the process here? So statement 2 is different, statement 1 is different. அது ரெண்டுமே ஒண்ணா தான் சொல்லிருக்காங்களா இல்ல ரெண்டுத்துக்கும் வித்தியாசமே இல்ல, ரெண்டும் ஒண்ணு தான். They are not it's not the correct explanation for, it's a correct explanation. இதுல எது அப்படின்றத நம்ம இப்ப பார்க்கலாம். And here you can see the flowers and young stems and other softer organs are able to maintain the due to turgidity of the Targar pressure. So loss of turgidity ennago, the shoots drop down, the leaves start to wilting. So the pressure potential, hydrostatic pressure, keeps checking on the entry of water into cells. Targar pressure enna vela panudhu appdi pathina, pressure potential. The potential of the water information, mineral information, all will be carried out by the pressure process. And hydrostatic pressure means what? From the root system to the stem region to all parts of the information. So அந்த ஒரு ரூட்ல இருந்து மேல அப்படி மூவ் ஆகி போற அந்த process தான் என்னது? Hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure means what? The pressure will be given from the top of the plant system. So transpiration, full process giving you transpiration, full process. So that is also play important role for pulling upward of the water content in the xylem region of the root system. And here you can see the option 2 is the right answer. Why? Because statement 1 is true, statement 2 is also true, but statement 2 is not a correct explanation for the statement 1. Targar pressure process மூலமா excess amount of water will be into the cells. How much the cells are getting Targar pressure, how the excess amount of water will be filled by the process of the plant system will be checked by Targar system. But wilting occurs due to the loss in turgidity. இது வந்து ஒரு Targar pressure is the part of transpiration process taking over. ஓகேங்களா? ஒரு செல் டு இன்னொரு செல்லுக்கு இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் ட்ராவல் ஆகி போகிறது, வாட்டர் கண்டென்ட் ட்ராவல் ஆகி போகிறது. பட் wilting occurs due to the loss in turgidity. If there is no proper water surrounded by the plant system, the wilting of the leaves, and they are not erect in situation. Erect situation la irukka matanga. So that is different. That is it's not a correct explanation for the statement 1. Okay, so we're going to see, we have only 4 questions, students. This is the 7th question. We're going to see which one of them will not directly affect the transpiration process. Transpiration process direct affect பண்ணாத ஒரு component எதுன்னு கேக்குறாங்க. Temperature, light, wind speed and chlorophyll content of the leaves. இந்த ஒரு questionல நீங்க transpiration அப்படின்றது என்னன்றதை புரிஞ்சுக்கணும், transpiration location எங்க நடக்குதுன்றதை புரிஞ்சுக்கணும். ஓகேங்களா? You have to understand where you can see the location, where you can see the transpiration takes place on the leaf surface. On the leaf surface. Leaf surface la enga nadakudhu? Stomatal regions. Okay, and here you can see how exactly this process taking over, open and closing of the stomata. Okay, so the transpiration means what? The excess amount of water will be moved out of the plant system through the stomatal pores. And நீங்க பார்த்திருக்க முடியும், early morning நீங்க பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இல்ல summer seasonல நீங்க பார்க்கிறது கஷ்டம், but when you take a winter season, on the leaf surface you can see the small droplets of the water comes out when the excess amount of water inside the plant system. அவங்க என்ன பண்ணுவாங்கன்னா transpiration process மூலமா என்ன பண்ணிடுவாங்க, அந்த poresல இருந்து வெளியில அனுப்பிச்சிடுவாங்க. அது guttation சொல்லுவாங்க. இன்னொரு process இருக்கு. ஓகேங்களா? That is guttation. That is another different types of process. Will be water will be removed. And here the rate of transpiration will not be affected by the chlorophyll content. Directly you can see why the temperature increase the rate of transpiration. Why? Because temperature vanda enna aguvanga, water content low availability irukum. Water content low availability இருந்ததுனா அங்க என்ன ஆகும், transpiration process increase ஆகும். எதுக்கு? Inside a plant system க்கு நிறைய water தேவைப்படுன்றதுக்காக. And here you can see the light quality and intensity also play a role important in transpiration process. Low level lightல இருக்கிறப்போ, I mean with light இல்ல அப்படினா dark timeல என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா stomatal will be closed. So there is no transpiration process occurs in order to save the water content inside the plant system. And here you can see the wind speed. Higher the wind speed, more will be the rate of transpiration. So the kind of reaction is transpiration is never directly affected by the process of chlorophyll content of the leaves, because the chlorophylls are doing photosynthesis process, which inside the cell you can see the chloroplast is contained having all the pigments of the photosynthetic process. So that is different, and these three will definitely slightly get affected. And we are going to see only 3 questions. We are going to see the 8 questions. And translocation of organic solutes in sieve tubes members are supported by P proteins are mass flow involving carrier and ATP, or cytoplasmic streaming, or root pressure and transpiration pull. Students, translocation of organic solutes. Organic solutes. Okay? Organic solutes are nothing but the synthesized food materials. Okay, so the synthesized food materials which present inside of a sieve tube members of the supported by P proteins, mass flow involved in carrier and ATP, and cytoplasmic streaming, and root pressure and transpirational pull. So we're going to see exactly what the P proteins and cytoplasmic streaming. Here you've already discussed about the root pressure and transpiration pull, mass flow involved in carrier and ATP. It's called as bulk flow process. It's called as bulk flow process. One of the transportation process occurs inside the plant system. Okay, inside the plant system of the phloem. Okay, where the phloem sap is removed, the sucrose, fructose materials, of synthesized materials of the food materials. So that is also important. And P proteins are the most abundant proteins present inside the sieve elements or companion cells. They are nothing but phloem proteins. Okay, they're nothing but phloem proteins, and phloem proteins is also important inside the phloem. Phloem kulla irukra and the regions la irukra and the proteins enna pandranga, enzymatic proteins are present in the elements. They are actually helping for the translocation process. They are helping for the translocation process. And cytoplasmic streaming means what? The movement of the fluid inside of a plant system. I mean cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, every individual word is important. Cyto means what? Cell, and plasm, aquatic part. Aquatic part. Okay, so inside that aquatic part you can see the movement of the fluid, that is cytoplasmic streaming. So the option is the P proteins, the phloem proteins are helping for supporting for the organic solutes to enter into the sieve tubes to conduction of the by multi-directional way of transportation process inside the plant system. That is called as translocation. Okay, the synthesized materials which is transferred to all the required areas. See, for plant la you have to be very clear. லீஃப் ஸ்ட்ரக்சரில் இருக்கிற ஒரு ஃபுட் மெட்டீரியல்ஸை எல்லா பார்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் த பிளான்ஸும் என்ன பண்ணும், ரிக்வயர்டு இருக்குது இல்லையா? there is a root, there is a stem, there is a branch. So இந்த ரீஜன் எல்லாருக்குமே லீஃபில் இருக்கிற அந்த ஃபுட் மெட்டீரியல்ஸ் how they are getting inside translocation process மூலமாக தான். Translocation மூலமாக தான் the synthesized food materials, all the organic components will be transported in the multi-directional way where they are required. So the P proteins are playing important role in where it's present inside the phloem. Phloem தான் என்ன பண்ணுறாங்க, minerals and I mean synthesized food materials என்ன பண்ணுறாங்க, mostly transport பண்றாங்க. So the phloem proteins inside, it's helping for that particular translocation process. So the P proteins are important when you talk about the translocation of organic solids in sieve tube members of supported by. So just 2 questions. இன்னும் ரெண்டு questions தான் இருக்கு. And both the transpiration and evaporation water is lost in the form of vapor, yet they differ because here you can see transpiration process, evaporation process. Transpiration, evaporation ரெண்டுமே ஒண்ணா கிடையாது. Evaporation வந்து என்ன, transpiration வந்து என்னன்றதை நம்ம பார்க்கலாம். Both transpiration and evaporation similar, but the rate of water loss differ. First option. Frequency of water losses differ in both them. And another one you can see, transpiration is a physical process, evaporation is a physiological process. Physical process ko physiological process in any meaning, physical process occurs in anywhere, but physiological process occurs only in living organisms. Okay, is it clear, students? And physiological process, and transpiration is a physiological process, evaporation is the physical process. And we are going to see here, you can see the stoma. This is actually the stomatal cells. Here the God cells are here, the stoma region which is opened, and in this region you can see very clear the transpiration of water through the stoma. Stoma மூலமா என்ன ஆகுது, transpiration of water will be move out. And here high diffusion rate, diffuse ஆகி வெளியில போகுது பாருங்க, high diffusion rate, அதிகமா diffuse ஆகி வெளியில போகுது. Low diffusion rate, this is the low diffusion rate. Either this is the mesophyll cells, God cells, which is surrounded by the stomatal region, and this is taking place inside of a plant system. This is called as transpiration. Okay, in the process transpiration, but evaporation from a water for macro scale surface, that is, this is actually called as physical process. Okay, so there is a difference in evaporation and transpiration. So transpiration occurs only in plants, only from living cells, and evaporation occurs in any free surface, both from living and non-living surface. Evaporation process nadakum. That is also important. So the option is transpiration is a physiological process. That means it can happen only in living cells. I mean the plant cells, transpiration. Okay, and evaporation is a physical process. So the option 4 is the right answer. Here the final question we are going to see, students, the number 10th question. And leaves which appear wilted in the daytime and recover at night time, for what is the reason? Because, okay, what is exactly, the light is essential for photosynthesis, and here you can see the stomata close down, temperature decrease, and transpiration is reduced, and the plant is able to absorb more water from the soil. Option second. And respiration and translocation of organic substances both increase. What happens here? Respiration process மூலமா, respiration means what? Gaseous exchange. And translocation of organic substances. Translocation of organic substances means what? The phloem transport system. And both will be increased when the leaves which appear wilted in the daytime recovered because of kekranga. And plant is sleeping because of the dark conditions. Plant sleep பண்ணுமா டார்க் கண்டிஷனில் இருக்கும்போது. இந்த ரீசனால தான் வில்டட் ஆகுது, நைட் டைமில் டே டைமில் ரெக்கவர் ஆகுது அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு கேட்குறாங்க. ஓகேங்களா? சாரி, the daytime is wilted in the daytime, recover at night timeனு கேட்குறாங்க. So what here exactly? Here you can see the normal plant. This is the wilted plant. Okay, the normal plant la enna process nadakum, abundance of water, the photosynthesis process will take over normally, and here the transpiration process, water vapor will come out from the stomatal opens, and CO2 is getting inside and doing photosynthesis process. All these will be taking place normally. But wilted plant la enna agum, water shortage irukra plants, in the water shortage irukudun therinjale inga closed aidum stomata. Okay, so stomata will be closed, there is no transpiration process, and transpiration process nadakudho illiyo, there is no enough amount of water content present inside of a plant system. So the entire plant system will become not erect. They are become very weak. So the wilt plant is here. So leaves which appear wilted, okay, wilted, and the daytime recover at night because the stomata are closed. Temperature decrease, transpiration is reduced. The plant is able to absorb more water from the soil. See, here you can see when it is night time, the outside temperature reduce, ensuring the adequate amount of water in the plant system. Night time la enna agum, temperature reduce ஆகுறப்போ plant குள்ள இருக்கிற water molecules என்ன ஆகும், adequate amountல இருக்கும். So leaves wilt when surrounding temperature rises. Surrounding ecosystem has to provide a proper temperature for all the physiological process. For the surrounding and the temperature rise ana, what happens? It due to high rate of transpiration. So during the night, transpiration reduce and absorption of water will be from the soil increase. So this region will give you the stomata close down, temperature decrease, and transpiration is reduced, and plant is able to absorb more water from the soil. So the option 2 is the right answer. Okay, students, so we have seen the 10 questions today in transport in plants, and thank you for joining in the live session. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you.